Good morning. The purpose of this briefing is to deliver a definitive strategic analysis of Joby Aviation. I want to be perfectly clear, we are not here to discuss transient market sentiment or speculate about quarterly earnings. Our mandate is to deconstruct the foundational physics, the manufacturing doctrine, and the geopolitical architecture that underpins this entire enterprise. We will proceed with clinical precision. Our analysis is structured across 6 critical domains. We'll start with the physics of silence, which is the bedrock technical advantage. Then we will dissect its vertical integration, a manufacturing weapon built for scale. From there, we'll analyze the infrastructure land grab, a strategy that's about owning the network itself. We'll then elevate to the geopolitical fortress to understand how regulation is being wielded as a non-tariff barrier. After that, we will rigorously stress test the entire system for its systemic fragility, and finally we will synthesize all of these elements to understand Joby's ultimate role in forging a new urban equilibrium. So we begin at the most fundamental layer, the physics. Because before we can even begin to talk about economics or market share or geopolitics, we have to understand the machine. You see, the entire investment thesis, the whole potential for market capture, it doesn't rest on a business plan. It rests on a single, immutable technical truth. 45 decibels. Now, this isn't just some performance metric you find on a spec sheet. You have to understand that this number is the key. It is the key that unlocks the sovereignty of urban airspace. And to really appreciate its profound significance, we have to dissect it meticulously through 3 distinct analytical layers. First, we'll look at the physics of how the sound is actually generated. Second, we'll examine the microeconomic consequences of that sound profile. And finally, the macro geopolitical advantage it confers upon those who control it. Okay, first the physics. A conventional helicopter, think of a Black Hawk, it generates that characteristic high-energy thump, thump, thump sound through a phenomenon called blade-vortex interaction. I want you to picture each rotor blade as a wing, with its tip moving at near supersonic speeds. As it slices through the air, it sheds a powerful, swirling vortex of air, like a miniature tornado. Well, the next blade comes around and literally collides with that vortex. That collision creates an intense, impulsive pressure wave that our ears perceive as a thump. Joby's design eliminates this at its very source. Its 6 rotors are distributed, their diameters are smaller, and, this is critical, their tip speeds are deliberately kept low, well below the speed of sound. Now, this architecture doesn't eliminate sound, it diffuses it. It transforms a high-energy percussive noise into a low-frequency, broadband acoustic profile. The result? At 100 meters of altitude, it registers at just 45 decibels. And that isn't just quiet, it's a fundamentally different character of sound. It's acoustically equivalent to a light rainfall, designed to blend seamlessly into the ambient noise of any major city. So what is the microeconomic consequence of this physical reality? Well, this acoustic signature is, for all intents and purposes, a regulatory bypass. It completely circumvents the not in my backyard, or NIMBY, ordinances that have effectively banned helicopter traffic in high-value commuter markets like the Hamptons or Malibu for decades. The ability to operate this quietly enables 24/7 operations over dense urban centers. That's simply unthinkable for conventional helicopters, which are often restricted to daylight hours. And this in turn fundamentally alters the calculus of urban real estate. A rooftop is no longer just a place for an HVAC unit. It becomes a high-value transit hub, potentially generating millions in new revenue for building owners. And of course, the quietness allows for flight paths directly over residential zones that were previously politically and legally off-limits, which dramatically increases the network's efficiency by allowing for more direct point-to-point routes. Now, let's zoom out to the third layer, the macro geopolitical consequence. A city that can move people and goods silently and efficiently in the third dimension possesses a profound logistical and economic advantage over its global peers. The ability to compress a 90-minute ground journey into 7 minutes, multiplied across millions of inhabitants. While that's not a consumer convenience, that is a state-level infrastructure advantage. It increases productivity and boosts global competitiveness. This acoustic profile is the key that allows a megacity, say a London or Tokyo, to finally transition from a congested 2-dimensional grid, still fundamentally limited by its colonial-era road network, into a fluid 3-dimensional operating system. All right, so you have this fundamental physical advantage. But an advantage is useless if it isn't defensible and scalable. This brings us to the second domain of our analysis, how that advantage is protected by a near fanatical doctrine of vertical integration. Unlike nearly every other player in the aerospace sector, from Boeing to Airbus, who are, let's be honest, effectively assemblers of components sourced from a global supply chain, Joby has made a radically different strategic choice. They design and manufacture approximately 90% of their critical systems entirely in-house. We're talking about the proprietary electric motors, the inverters that control them, the battery packs, the flight control actuators, and of course, the software that unifies it all into a single, cohesive system. You have to understand, this is not a matter of corporate preference. This is a strategic weapon. An assembler, say a competitor, who's relying on off-the-shelf parts, is forced to design their aircraft around the weight and performance specs of components from suppliers like Honeywell or Safran. They are constrained from the very beginning. Joby, on the other hand, can optimize every single gram. A lighter actuator means a lighter battery pack, which translates directly into more miles of range. This unified design philosophy also eliminates the integration failures that plague complex systems built from disparate parts. You know, the costly delays and performance issues that are just endemic to the legacy aerospace model. And on top of that, it creates a fortress around their intellectual property. But most critically, it gives them total control over their production velocity, untethered from the whims and vulnerabilities of an external supply chain. Now, the strategic investment from Toyota, this was not just for capital. It was a cellular-level transplant of the Toyota production system, the TPS, right into the heart of Joby's manufacturing DNA. And this is the solution to what we call the aerospace scale paradox. What is that paradox? Well, the legacy aerospace industry is defined by artisanal, hand-built processes. I mean, picture a single technician spending months on just one component. This results in incredibly low volumes and exorbitant costs per unit. Toyota, on the other hand, has perfected high-volume, high-precision manufacturing. What they've done is infuse Joby with a methodology for applying automotive scale efficiency and sub-millimeter precision to the production of aerospace-grade hardware. This is a concept that is entirely alien to the incumbent sector, which has literally never had to think about building thousands of aircraft per year. And this leads us to the only manufacturing metric that will matter for the next decade: monthly yield. While a legacy manufacturer like Bell or Sikorsky produces units per year, Joby is scaling its facilities in Marina, California and Dayton, Ohio to produce units per week. This radical increase in production velocity is the microeconomic weapon that will allow them to capture market share and establish an insurmountable cost advantage before competitors can even get their first aircraft certified. Volume is the ultimate moat. An aircraft, no matter how advanced, is a depreciating asset. It has a finite lifespan. But the infrastructure that enables it to operate, that can be a permanent monopoly. This brings us to the core of Joby's third strategic pillar. It's the Vanderbilt playbook, just reimagined for the third dimension. Joby's ultimate strategy is not actually centered on the vehicle. It's centered on the methodical capture of the logistical and digital choke points of the entire urban air mobility ecosystem. The execution is a three-pronged assault. First, you have the 2020 acquisition of Uber Elevate. This was not a technology play. It was the capture of the demand engine itself. By integrating directly into the Uber app with its hundreds of millions of users, they've secured a monopoly on the seamless multimodal journey from a car to a plane and back to a car, all inside a single interface. Second, the partnership with Reef Technology, the largest parking garage operator in North America. This is a masterstroke. It converts thousands of strategically located urban rooftops into exclusive landing pads. This creates a physical monopoly. A competitor's superior aircraft becomes irrelevant if it has nowhere to land in the central business districts of New York, or Miami, or Los Angeles. And third, the creation of the GECAS charging standard. By positioning this as an open standard, they are executing a modern parallel to Standard Oil. They are building the infrastructure to tax every electron consumed by their competitors, establishing a digital toll booth on the energy itself. So we have to understand that the aircraft is a Trojan horse. The true permanent high-margin asset is not the hardware. It is the control of three-dimensional real estate, the air rights, the landing pads, and the digital transaction layer that governs the entire network. That's the real prize. Now we elevate our analysis to the macro geopolitical layer. And at this altitude, Joby doesn't function merely as a company. It functions as an instrument of Western industrial and regulatory policy. What we are witnessing here is not just a competition between two companies, like a Boeing versus an Airbus. This is a clash between two geopolitical doctrines vying for control of the sky. On one hand, you have the Western path, embodied by Joby and the FAA. This has been a decade-long deliberate process of co-authoring the rules of engagement. The G1 and G2 certification bases, these are the foundational documents that define safety for this entire new class of aircraft. They are the result of years of data sharing between Joby and the regulator. It's a piloted first, autonomous later approach, designed to build public and regulatory trust incrementally. In stark contrast, you have the Chinese path, embodied by EHang. This is an autonomous first, state-directed strategy that prioritizes speed over process. And frankly, it's a masterstroke of psychological and regulatory warfare for Joby to pursue the piloted path. Why? Because it establishes a safety case built on terabytes of real-world flight data, something that is nearly impossible for the black box autonomous first approach of their main competitor to replicate. So the FAA type certification therefore functions as a powerful non-tariff barrier. By establishing the gold standard for safety and operational procedure, the West ensures that any nation in the high-growth markets, India, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, any nation wanting to build an urban air mobility network must adopt Western hardware and Western protocols. A country like the UAE, which has already signed a major deal with Joby, isn't just buying aircraft. They're importing the entire FAA-approved regulatory and safety ecosystem. This effectively locks out competitors who operate under a different regulatory philosophy, creating a powerful geopolitical shield and securing a trillion-dollar export market for the United States. Now, having established the comprehensive case for dominance, intellectual rigor demands that we analyze the system's critical vulnerabilities. We have to stress test the foundational assumptions upon which this entire structure is built.
The primary bottlenecks that threaten to inhibit Joby's growth, they're not financial and they're not technological in the way we usually think. They are physical constraints on the velocity of capital deployment.
There are three critical dependencies. First, human capital. That piloted first strategy, while a regulatory masterstroke, creates a significant operational drag. The model requires tens of thousands of commercially rated pilots in a market that is already experiencing a severe global shortage. This isn't a human resources problem. It's a physical governor on the velocity of capital deployment. You can simply build aircraft faster than you can train and certify pilots. Second, energy infrastructure. The 10-minute rapid charge needed for high-tempo operations requires an instantaneous power draw equivalent to that of a small shopping mall. This forces Joby to become a power infrastructure company, investing billions in high-capacity energy storage and grid upgrades at every single vertiport just to avoid collapsing local power grids. That's a massive capital expenditure that comes long before revenue. And finally, battery technology. The current reliance on lithium-ion chemistry imposes a hard ceiling of about 160 kilometers on the aircraft's range. That's sufficient for intracity travel, but it cuts them out of the much more lucrative intracity market. If breakthroughs in solid-state battery tech stall, Joby risks ceding that entire market to hydrogen-powered competitors who may have a longer range.
And so, we arrive at the synthesis. What is the final clinical assessment of the Joby Aviation entity?
This is the fundamental thesis. The company's product is not the vehicle. The product is the compression of time. It is a solution to the $12 trillion annual economic drag caused by urban congestion. They are selling a vacuum cleaner for wasted time. Our final assessment is therefore one of a high-risk, high-reward transformation. In our current high-interest rate, multipolar world, capital is no longer free. Joby's survival is entirely contingent on its ability to execute a perfect transition from a capital-intensive hardware manufacturer to a high-margin, recurring revenue utility provider. And it must achieve this transition before its substantial capital moat is exhausted by the physical constraints of pilot supply and energy infrastructure. Its success will fundamentally redefine urban economics for the 21st century. Its failure, however, is predicated on concrete, physical, and capital constraints that are both measurable and severe. The outcome is not yet determined, but the variables are crystal clear. This concludes the briefing.